Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. So today we've got something pretty cool to check out. We've got ourselves a brand new sauropod from Takara Tomy. As you can see, the Argentinosaurus has been released. I was lucky enough to get this thanks to my good friend Dino Mike Mac, who was super cool and found this in his area and grabbed it for me. But I'd imagine they should be on eBay by now. Not 100% positive, but regardless, I'm really excited to actually see an Argentinosaurus getting a release. And, you know, lately we've been seeing a little bit more love for this species, which is definitely not a bad thing. Packaging, though, is unfortunately a little bit beat up, but as you move around the box, you can see other images and stuff that we have on here. A shot here on the back of some artwork for the dinosaur, and then again another shot over here like a little dino toy photography. So let's pop the box open and check it out. So inside the box we've got some cards, one of which is in English, luckily for me. So you can see this would be the English version of the card, and you have some information and stuff here all about the dinosaurs. So pretty cool that Takara Tomy includes those. But on top of that, we also of course have, and let me reposition the camera because it's going to be probably a little bit taller. Well, maybe not that tall, but we have the Argentinosaurus figure itself, and for what it is, you know, it's actually pretty cool looking. I will say I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the color scheme they've given it, but overall I think the sculpt looks pretty nice. And one thing that's kind of nice about this is even though the ball joints are here on the tail, like you can position it to the point where the tail will like curve and the ball joint isn't super noticeable, kind of anyway, for this one, mostly because like the tail is pretty thick in that spot. And I know one thing that many people dislike about the Takara Tomy brand are the ball joints in the tails, so I did want to kind of mention that. But again, the figure looks pretty fun, so let's jump to a closer look and check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Argentinosaurus, you can see it looks pretty decent. You have some decent looking detail. Again, it's not overly vibrant when it comes to the skin texture or anything, but it looks nice. You've got the eye painted with a black, kind of has like a little glossy look to it, and I think the black works pretty good for the dinosaur. You can see the mouth sculpted, and the mouth is in a closed position. We have like a bluish tone for the body, but as you move down you do pick up like some alternate tones of color briefly. You have like a striping effect that picks up and runs down for a little bit there in the neck but then disappears. You also have a light yellowish tone moving along the underside of the dinosaur, and of course with an Argentinosaurus you are going to have a pretty massive neck. Now as you move through the neck you can see the skin texture looks pretty good, and again I think with a repaint this one looks or could look really good when it comes to the detail. I feel like the colors might be kind of obscuring the detail a little bit, not showing us how nice the actual sculpt looks, and I feel like it does look pretty decent. But you do have a few areas of articulation as you move down. One spot right here where you can completely snap the neck of the dinosaur. It can also go up, and then you also have a spot right here which can go down and also go up. Now I'll be the first to admit that that sort of thing going on is almost horrendous, but if you want to articulate the dinosaur's neck and have it in like a way where it doesn't look super awkward, you just have to kind of carefully reposition it, and you can articulate the neck into different positions that don't look absolutely awful. But this style of articulation definitely isn't the best route when it comes to a sauropod. I feel like articulating the neck in this sort of a way is just very awkward. The best would have been a joint down here where you can just move the neck up and down, rather than these midsection or these like midway up the neck areas of articulation. Again, it's Takara Tomy trying to kind of come up with something a little bit different, and also at the same time continuing their trend of having awkward articulation, but it's just not really the best way to go about it. As you move down here, you can see the spinal column moving along the back of the dinosaur. As you lead down into the body, the overall body looks very muscular, very impressive. You can just see so much muscle definition, as well as some decent girth in the belly here of the dinosaur, so it looks pretty healthy. But as you move up, you can see the shoulder blade there shining through the skin. You can also see again that front leg looks really good as you move down. You've got some nails sculpted out there on the toes, and not painted though. We don't have any paintwork for the nails at all when it comes to this dinosaur. But as you can see, the dinosaur is taking a step. It's obviously in the position of walking. We don't have any articulation for the legs, sadly, but you can see how this rear leg is picking up off of the ground. Again, the muscles tensing, very impressive muscle definition on this one. You can see the hip bone. And again, the skin texture does look really decent. Like I feel like just needs a better paint application, and you could really see and appreciate how good that sculpt work is. As you move along the underside, we continue to have that yellowish tone moving through the course of the entire underside, all the way out there to the tip of the tail. And again, we have the decent looking skin texture. As you move back here into the tail, though, you have another area of articulation that can go down and can go up very awkwardly. And again, it's not the greatest, but it's not too bad out here. Like, it doesn't look super out of place when you move the tail out here. Not like it does with the neck, because this is at like the, basically the area where the tail begins. So that's the area where you'd think you'd want to move the tail, whereas they've chosen here to kind of start in the middle of the neck, which looks super awkward. But as you move out, you again have the ball joint, which can go left or right. It can also go up and down a little bit and swivel. But if you move the ball joint, you can now make the tail go up and down. So it's basically just about positioning that ball joint to achieve the articulated area that you want. But as you move out, you can see a really nice curve to the tail. As you lead out there toward the tip, you can also see that that blue transitions away, and we end our sauropod with basically that light yellow tone that we have of the underside, overtaking the entire tip of the tail. And obviously from the other side, you just still see the positioning of the dinosaur walking along, and again, that really long neck. So it's by no means an amazing figure, but it is still a pretty cool version of an Argentinosaurus. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the snout, about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. Obviously, it would be a little bit bigger if that tail were outstretched rather than curved the way it is. For a height in the position it's currently in, about 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. Same deal for that area. You could, of course, put the neck up higher and make it way taller. So those are just the measurements in the position that it's currently in. Before size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Argentinosaurus. And you can very clearly see it's probably one of the smallest Argentinosaurus figures you'll ever see, because, normally with a species this large, the figures would be massive. But in this case, it is actually pretty big for a Takara Tomy figure, because the Takara Tomy figures are usually pretty small. And to further show you that, there is the Argentinosaurus next to the Jurassic World Dominion Therizinosaurus. Now, very clearly, these are not to scale with each other by any means, but you will be able to tell that what your average Takara Tomy figure size-wise would be similar to the Therizinosaurus, maybe even a little bit smaller, whereas here the Argentinosaurus is quite a bit larger. And something that's interesting is Takara Tomy has previously released a large sauropod like this, as they had released a Supersaurus at one point, which is what you see here next to the Argentinosaurus. Interestingly enough, I did film a review for this figure. It actually features a baby and a Quetzalcoatlus, but because it was filmed so long ago, and it was one of those figures, one of those reviews that just continuously got pushed aside for other stuff, it's been years since I filmed that review, and I actually mispronounced Quetzalcoatlus all the time back then. I would say Quetzalcoatlus, because it was just like that weird mispronunciation that I had from when I was a kid. I would always mispronounce that pterosaur's name. So the fact that I have since corrected my pronunciation for that for quite a few years now, and broke that habit, I never released that video, and for some reason still don't feel compelled to release it. But maybe I will at some point, because, again, you don't get Supersaurus figures very often. But anyway, now that I rambled forever, basically, if you have the Supersaurus, you can see it's kind of similar in size to the Argentinosaurus, but the Argentinosaurus is a lot bulkier than our Supersaurus. And then to give you one more idea of a size, if you happen to have any of the Mattel Minis, here is the recently released Brachiosaurus from the Mattel Minis line next to the Argentinosaurus from Takara Tomy, and you can very clearly see what the size range here is between these two when it comes to an average Mattel Mini next to the Takara Tomy Argentinosaurus. So this brand new Argentinosaurus from Takara Tomy is pretty cool. It's not an amazing figure, definitely doesn't do this figure or this species justice. I feel like there's definitely someone out there waiting to make a way better version. I know Araterra recently had made an Argentinosaurus, which is amazing, and I definitely need to get my hands on. But this is one species of dinosaur you don't see too many people create, but at least it kind of seems like it's starting to get some love. We did recently have an amazing passion charger version of the Argentinosaurus as well, but when it comes to like a more readily available, cheaper version, this is probably one of the very few out there. So it is nice that Takara Tomy went and created something like this to at least give somebody an option to own one if you don't have money for like a larger, more expensive like resin model or something like that. But the figure as a whole is nicely sculpted when it comes to the fine detail, and overall I think it's an okay looking version of an Argentinosaurus. It's clearly a little goofy looking, but not bad. The biggest problem that I have for the figure would be the articulation and the way that it works. Like the articulated joints in the neck and the tail do not look good. That's something that always is the case with Takara Tomy when it comes to their articulated joints and normally having like ball joints and stuff, but it's particularly bad in this one, especially in the neck, because the way that the neck articulates is so unnatural, and actually articulating the neck just makes it look so weird every way you move it. So there's no real good way to articulate the neck in any way that actually benefits you. So it's just always going to look awkward no matter what you do. So I'm not a huge fan of the articulation of the figure, but it is still kind of cool to have articulation on an Argentinosaurus. It's just not really well done, but it's Takara Tomy. Their articulation's never really all that well done, so it's kind of to be expected. The paintwork also isn't the best thing about it. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the colors here or the tones of color. I've recently been starting to enjoy blues on sauropods more, especially with Howlong Good releasing some blues on their sauropods and stuff. But like overall, it's just kind of awkward looking, I think, and the coloration just has like a little bit of a satin shine to it, which almost shines away the detail and doesn't really show off how nice the actual sculpt of the figure is, because I feel like underneath that awkward looking paint there is some decent detail. So it does have its ups, it's got its downs, but at least it's an Argentinosaurus, we can say that. If you are interested, I will try to find a link to include in the description to where you can purchase this, hopefully on eBay or somewhere like that. I don't know what the price range is for it currently, but if I can find one, I will of course link you in the description, and let me know what you guys think of it, and of course like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.